Welcome back, and we're once again joined by our guests, Robert Pape, University of Chicago, Project on Security and Threats, and Carolyn Shapiro from IIT Kent College of Law. Carolyn Shapiro, I want to sort of widen the scope about all these other cases that we talked about at the top of the show. There have been a lot decided here at the lower level court, federal court in the Northern District of Illinois, including prohibiting projectiles and weapons used against journalists or protesters, prohibiting this large-scale warrantless arrest policy that ICE has used. What does that tell you about the scope of immigration actions here, and how directly they seem to be running afoul of the law?
I think, first of all, the courts are doing an amazing job here. And the judges are being incredibly careful. I want to really emphasize that. I've been following some of these proceedings very closely, and they are asking both sides hard questions. The two other cases you're referring to. One is a TRO that was issued today by Judge Sarah Ellis, requiring the federal agents not to use certain types of relatively violent actions against peaceful protesters, religious leaders, or religious figures who are praying primarily at Broadview, and journalists. And I've seen video. I'm sure many of your viewers have seen video of federal agents actually firing paintballs or pepper spray at journalists or at protesters. And that's just completely inconsistent with the First Amendment. We allow for peaceful protest. That is one of our strengths as a country. It is one of our core values as a country. And firing paintballs and pepper spray or pepper balls at people engaged in that or people reporting on it is simply unconstitutional. Likewise, arresting people, pulling people off the street because of how they look, or because they are in a particular neighborhood, is also inconsistent with the Constitution. And ICE had actually entered into a consent decree requiring it to follow the law, but in this case to not arrest people without warrants. And Judge Cummings found that they have been violating that consent decree in their actions in the Chicago area. That was just, I believe, yesterday. So there's and then on top of that are the cases I mentioned earlier, where the government has charged individuals with crimes, and then as it's not been able to make those charges even get past a grand jury and has dismissed them. Yeah. So what we have, I think, again, is an attempt by the federal government to engage in activity that is clearly unconstitutional, and to claim a kind of immunity from the law, which the federal government does not have. Yeah, that's why we have a constitution. That's why we have a Bill of Rights.
And a top aide for the president, Stephen Miller, has continually projected that the president simply does have this authority based on what legal precedent we don't know. But Robert Pape, not only that, but the fact that these agents are putting out videos that look like action movies, and they're very provocative, and they have music, and they're really forceful in the public presentation, announcing their presence here. When you look at that, does that sound like they are trying to be provocative and escalate the situation?
Well, actually, Paris, so I spent some time on the DHS social media just recently this morning on, say, X, and I encourage people to go look. And they'll see it's not just they look like action movies, but what you see on the DHS feed is they are literally describing the goals of the protesters. And I'm using the exact words in the DHS feed from the DHS as intended to kill the DHS agents. So what they are doing is, there's no evidence of that, there's no document of that. They are just literally asserting that the purpose of those protesters is to kill the DHS agents. Well, this is exactly the kind of truly incendiary rhetoric that we know from many, many cases in history that actually is provocative. It produces defiance. It doesn't just scare everybody. And what it is it inflames an already touchy situation. So it's actually worse once you look at the details.
Yeah, multiple battlegrounds here. There's the courts, there's what's happening on the ground, but there's the information battleground here. And no question, the federal government has invested heavily in filming and videotaping and really trying to shape the narrative of what's happening as we await 14 days now, and whether or not there'll be an extension on this. I want to thank Carolyn Shapiro and Robert Pape. Thank you, as always, for your great analysis. And we got some fun when we come back after this. We got a great Chicago comedy troupe and the great Chicago movie that is yet to be made. Stay tuned.